Along with Judge Jeanine Pirro, Harold Ford Jr., Jesse Waters, and Greg Gutfeld. It's 5 o'clock in New York City, and this is The Five. Walz has faced credibility issues from stolen valor claims to embellishing his military record. And last night, he stumbled over whether he was in Hong Kong during the Tiananmen Square protest, despite many outlets reporting that he wasn't.
Can you explain that discrepancy?
My community knows who I am. They saw where I was at. Look, I will be the first to tell you, I have poured my heart into my community. I've tried to do the best I can, but I've not been perfect, and I'm a knucklehead at times.
Governor, just to follow up on that, the question was, can you explain
knucklehead
the discrepancy?
All I said on this was I got there that summer and misspoke on this. So I will just, that's what I've said. So I was in Hong Kong and China during the democracy protests.
By the way, I told you, motherfuckers, they would be like civility for 2 seconds and then immediately start hitting Tim Walz. And they're precisely doing that.
Governor Walz had an entire night to sleep on those comments. His cleanup job wasn't that great.
Look, I have my dates wrong. I was in Hong Kong and China in 1989. That move from Hong Kong into China, it was profound for me. That was the summer of democracy. I said it's where I understood how sacred democracy was.
All right, Greg Gutfeld, haven't heard from you yet, and looking forward to it.
He was unprepared, but why is that his fault? Democrats don't have to be prepared. They're usually operating under the assumption that it's going to be an easier ride for them than if you were a Republican. And he's like, what's up? What's with all this stuff? The media tried to lower expectations for Walz, and they were right to do that now that we see how he did. But they overplayed Vance's unlikability. So you were expecting something that wasn't charming, smart, or steady. So the media actually helped Vance by amplifying his unlikability. The first time you saw Vance was last night after a steady diet of media caricatures. What a shock it must have been. Wow, he's not weird. He's not mean. I mean, this guy came out and just shows you how the media lies to you. The media portrays those outside their bubble falsely. And then when you finally see the reality, then your eyes are open to the things they say.
He's not wrong, dude. He's not wrong. JD Vance is objectively a weirdo. He's gross as but like, if you didn't really pay attention and you just only heard people say he's weird, and then you watched it last night, you'd be like, no, he seems like a normal guy. It's so civil. And now CBS, CNN, NBC, ABC, they're all saying how civil the debate was. They are literally depicting him as a normal, if not a solid orator of Trump's policies. He did a good job. That's it. I hate him. I despise him. But as an analyst, I have to recognize that he did a good job of laundering his reputation. He did a good job of portraying himself as like a normal person. And Tim Walz absolutely allowed that to happen.
Vance also did something good. He knew this wasn't a political talk show where you try to score points by making statements loudly that will end up being retweeted. He wasn't going for the dopamine. He was going for the depth. And that was his mission. And his mission showed a contrast between steady and unsteady. He showed that a silencer is just as deadly as a shotgun. I think what is really cowardly, though, is the mistake Democrats made by not choosing Shapiro. You know, they might lose Pennsylvania. They definitely lost that debate because they wanted a guy who wasn't a Jew, you know, and now you've got a non-Jew who's frantic, nervous, chaotic, liar. I think this was a real slap in the face to the Harris campaign. No offense to her husband.
Judge, I want to get to you after you watch this. This is the liberal media who was forced to praise JD Vance. Call for number 4.
Walz did seem unsteady. And frankly, what I saw in Walz is somebody who has not faced questions on a national stage since he became the Democratic nominee. In contrast, JD Vance was very smooth.
I was getting texts from Democrats, panicked, quite frankly, who were saying, wow, he's really moderating himself on a lot of these issues. He's the most likable he has ever been.
He seemed at many moments to be reasonable.
Walz did not seem prepared for it.
I mean, a lot about this debate tonight was weird. There were uncomfortable, cringy moments.
There were so many niceties on that debate stage tonight. I am just kind of like, well, if you agree so much with JD Vance, why should they vote for you?
All right, Judge, take it away.
Well, I got to tell you, I mean, it's clear that even they understood that JD Vance was solid, he was friendly, he was polite, He was disciplined, and he was the kind of guy that for the first time, and by
This Shapiro bullshit is the conservative talking point. It's so fucking smarmy and disingenuous. They don't actually give a fuck. They shit on Shapiro too. They just think this is a free and cheap dig. Yeah, it is. But it's also correct. And that's the worst kind of cheap dig that you can make. Not the anti-Semitism stuff, but the fact that like I'm making the same exact argument. If you weren't going to actually unleash Walz as a progressive force, or at the very least, like sit there and defend certain progressive policies and adopt them, then why the f did you pick Tim Walz? Like, you should have literally picked Josh Shapiro. Josh Shapiro would be a better defender of like right-wing border bills and whatever kind of dumbass like right-wing idea you have. He'd be a better defender of Israel too. He could have sat up there and did his Obama routine and been like, first strike, if Tehran wants a nuke, it can keep it. And by that I mean an Israeli nuke on Tehran. Let me be clear. We will nuke Tehran. I'm Josh Shapiro. I'm pussy too. The voters you would have lost picking Shapiro, you've already lost by not changing your policies. It makes no sense. Yeah. The anti-Semitism stuff is the cheap thing I'm talking about. It's so gross coming from the actual Nazis. No, you're just this mad because your dad repeats it back to you. Okay. I mean, you're right, but you're extra mad because I know your dad, and I'm Jewish. I know megaphonics. I know you're Jewish, but yes, it's you're this emotionally invested in the Josh Shapiro stuff specifically because I feel like your dad keeps repeating these talking points to you, which is pretty funny. Anyway, but yeah, no, they don't give a fuck about anti-Semitism. What are we talking about? It's Fox News. It just doesn't make sense why they like chose Tim Walz and then like they discarded him. And for the record, Megaphonics is still under the HasanAbi protective barrier. Okay, he got harassed quite a bit. So we're not calling him magaphonic.
By the way, 88% of the American people said that this was a debate that was civil and that they enjoyed. I mean, that's a wonderful thing. And that's because of JD Vance. When they tried to cut him off, and we'll talk about that later, or when Walz lied, he was polite. This is a guy who's going to reach across the aisle. This is a guy who will make not only a great vice president, but a great president one day. And I don't want to get into a lot of the small stuff, but I got to tell you, I was exhausted watching Walz. I mean, it was like this, that, eyes punched out, turn around, right down. It was almost like he was waiting for the feds to come in and arrest him or something. I was like exhausted. But JD Vance, he so impressed me. And I think he impressed everybody. This is a guy who's going to try to solve problems. He didn't fight. He didn't play dirty. I just want to say one more thing about Walz. You know, being a knucklehead doesn't excuse you from being a serial liar.
That's the worst aspect of this like Hong Kong shit, is that he's not like a serial liar at all. That's just what like Republicans have chosen to lie about him on. Like for every 12 thing that they make up about Tim Walz and claim he's lying on, there's like 2 that sticks. And then everybody forgets that like there's 12 things, there are 10 other things that they made up. Bro, they thought he swapped out his dog, man. Like, what the f are we talking about? They thought he swapped out his dog, brother. And after last night's performance, I'm thinking maybe he did. I'm kidding. I don't care about lying about being at Tiananmen Square as much as I care about like a person who's currently lying about Haitians eating cats and dogs in an effort to fucking kill them. Call me controversial.
And I was saying, Harold, that Eddie Haskell from Leave It to Beaver was a knucklehead, right? It was, but you know, lying about things that are pretty basic, and then not having the ability to land an answer at your most important moment showed, I think, why the Democrats were nervous last night. How do you feel today?
So good to be back with everybody. I think the analysis that's been around the table.
No, boo! Bring us Jessica Tarkov. Boo! Boo! We want Tarkov. We want Tarkov. Boo! Where's Jessica? Where's my Jessica? Where's my sweetie pie? My queen?
Well, I think it was a very civil debate, and I think Tim Walz contributed to the civility also. But I think that the round robin we did with some of the other reporters and journalists, who I thought were honest about it. Three of us were on last night. And I said, there are 5 things I think you have to do when you are in a debate like this, president or vice president. You got to be likable and optimistic. You got to show strength and capability. You got to be smart. You got to be relatable. And ultimately, you got to show that you're presidential. JD Vance, you're right, Judge. He was coming from a little bit of a deficit because of some of the media characterizations, as you said, Greg. And he you know, you walked away. I didn't agree with him on a lot of things, but I didn't think he was a bad guy. I just think he's a guy that I don't agree with on things. But in terms of a person, a father, someone who's decent, and they agreed on child care, they agreed on guns, they agreed even in some other areas involving foreign policy, but they disagreed on some other things. I thought on the substance, JD was good on immigration and the border. He was good on the economy. He asked serious questions.
Bro was like, I love school shooters. Adderall Andy. Bro was like, I love school shooters. You think he actually said he loves school shooters and it wasn't just him misspeaking? That's incredible, dude. I mean, I joked about it too. He's a serial liar, although a lot of that shit, a big part of him is a lie. Even him lying about his kid is a shooting that never even happened. First of all, he said he befriended school shooters, which was a massive flub. No, he didn't accidentally say, I've known school shooters. Okay, stop. He accidentally said, I befriended school shooters. He meant like school shooter victims or school shooting families. Everybody understands that. Hannity talked about this on a serious show this afternoon and said Waltz meant what he said. That's awesome. JD Vance missed the other day here. We knew what he meant.
That I could take you on our campaign plane and give you the perspective that I've gotten to this country in the past 7 weeks. This is the coolest, other than being a wife to this beautiful lady here and a father.
Yeah, do you think JD Vance is JD Trans? Adderall Andy, you know, are we watching JD Trans? Is that what's going on? Yeah, also, this wasn't a lie, dog. What the Walt says his 17-year-old son witnessed the shooting as he played volleyball at the rec center. They fact-checked it. Anyway, my son was a witness to a shooting at a local Y. I carried weapons of war in war. I was in China when they did the massacre. Like, bro's running for VP and he's caused so many lies. Out of all of those things, you mentioned two things where he very clearly misspoke. Because if he was regularly talking about how he went to war and he's a combat veteran or some shit, you would have more than one instance where he has said that like 10 years ago, dumbass. That's number one. Number two, you mentioned something that it did happen and said it didn't happen. So you still haven't been able to find like an abject lie, except for this. I was in China when they did the massacre, which by the way, demonstrates that you don't even care about what the lie is or why it's so damaging or whatever. And now you're saying you're no better, but your bias obvious is insane. First of all, I am biased. I am. And I tell you how biased I am all the time. I am going to be writing in Joseph Robinette Brandon, okay? Because I'm riding with Biden. Why am I riding with Biden? Because these two scumbags, Tim Walz and Kamala Harris, stole the presidency from the only man who did NATO. Me and Ryan Ruth locked in a lover's quarrel. We are all the way to the end, the strongest allies of NATO. Biden did NATO. I'm writing his name in. That's number one. Number two, notice how you just slammed a whole bunch of nonsense here and then tried to package it with like one thing that is actually a lie. That's the whole point. That's what I'm trying to say. Tim Walz, like him, hate him. This kind of like idea that he's a serial liar is stupid. I hate JD Vance, and I very openly, for the past hour, have talked about, I hate JD Vance, and yet I've talked about how well he performed on the stage last night. That should have given you an understanding that, like, I'm not going to lie to you, okay? I'm going to tell you what's what. I'm going to tell you how it is. That's it. Dude doesn't know you defended Trump in the bloodbath comments, so not that biased. Yeah, my bias is towards the truth. Like, I don't give a shit. I don't find myself, I don't like the Democratic Party. I hate the Republican Party. That's it. Like, I don't give a shit. I'm just going to be honest with you. If either party represents my interests, I'll tell you.
It's about why isn't the vice president doing this now? And I thought that after they took the first commercial break, Walz was good coming back as he got his stride on abortion. He talked about health care, and if we undo the Affordable Care, what happens? I thought JD didn't have, that was the only time his substantive answers, they weren't as smooth as some of the others. And finally, I think the question he asked about, will you accept the outcome?
That's a good one. This is what Tim Walz meant with befriending school shooters.
Did you wear a tie like this for a special occasion? Post-debate tie?
Is this a special occasion tie?
I mean, it feels like happy. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Unlike you is what we're saying.
Yeah.
Like
See, that's a happy one.
You know, this tie reflects the mood of the country. We are pleasantly surprised. How many times could you say that after watching these debates? Because there was the JD Vance hoax that was destroyed last night. We were told that this guy was a sketchball. And then many Americans, especially women, saw JD.
I love hearing from another sketchball who is like an even grosser sketchball than JD Vance described to everybody that he's actually a likable fellow. I don't know how else to describe it. He just gives like sleazeball vibes. And by the way, before people say, Hasan, that's really up, I can't believe you're saying that. He literally openly admitted that he let out the goddamn air out of his now wife's tires at work so that she would be desperate enough to need his help. That is serial killer shit, dog.
JD Vance last night, and they thought, this seems like the kind of guy you can bring home to your parents. He's smooth, he's polished, he's reasonable.
I got blocked on Twitter before I deleted it because I kept tweeting at Jesse thinking if he's ever noticed women instinctively covering up their drinks when he walks by. That's so good. That's such a good lock, dude. Oh, sorry. He was married. And the woman that he did that to was his subordinate at the time. God, he's so gross.
When I was trying to get Emma to date me, first thing I did, let the air out of her tires. She couldn't go anywhere. She needed a lift. I said, hey, you need a lift? She copped right in the car.
Does she know this story?
No, she doesn't know the story.
Does she watch the show?
The Jesse Jr. does.
You're basically the Zodiac killer.
Like, even Buttfeld's like, dog, that's some serial killer shit. And I should know because I'm a serial killer. I mean, look at this guy. Look at his face.
It has a happy ending.
Really?
Yes, we're married.
Boy.
Apparently, Lebanese Foreign Minister Abdullah Abu Habib says Hezbollah leader Hasan Nasrallah agreed to a ceasefire right before Israel killed him. I mean, that makes a lot of sense. They have done that before.
He's civil, he's smart, he's humble. Everything that they said about him was completely the opposite. So he had a great night, but Trump even had a better night because Trump chose him. And remember, the first Trump term didn't pick the best people? A lot of people are now reassured that Trump is picking the right people this time. And in a race that this is this tight, you know how they say Trump has like 94% of Republicans? Mm-hmm. Those 6% of Republicans, you call them Nikki Haley people, never Trumpers, Christie, they loved JD Vance last night. I had so many texts from people like that saying, wow, JD Vance was amazing. Mm-hmm. And that's the kind of presentation that they long for, that Trump doesn't bring to the table, but that can bring independence, women with college degrees, and moderate Republicans back. So he added to the ticket and created momentum after the Democrats have had a real bad.
I think they're overhyping JD Vance stuff. Yeah, I mean, they need any victory that they can jump on. Okay, that's it.
Last 4 or 5 days. Walz seemed nice.
No, they didn't say Trump won the last debate. They were like, please stop talking about the debate. Nobody should even watch debates last time. JD Vance's damning non-answers. Harris Waltz immediately cutting an ad. Let's
really rich for Democratic leaders to say that Donald Trump is a unique threat to democracy when he peacefully gave over power.
He is still saying he didn't lose the election. I would just ask that. Did he lose the 2020 election?
Tim, I'm focused on the future.
That was a good line. He got his ass there. Why didn't you do this more, man? Why? Why didn't you do this more, Tim? Tim, I'm disappointed in you. I thought you were a secret Somali. A real Somali would have been fighting like a goddamn pirate, fighting for his own goddamn natural resources, his own coastline. You should have been fighting for the Democratic Party. Messed up. I guess he was a little bit of a secret Somali in the way that he was fighting for Minnesota. Wait, do they actually call him a secret Somali? No, I call him that, but in a positive way.
That is a damning non-answer. America, I think you've got a really clear choice of who's going to honor that democracy and who's going to honor Donald Trump.